and I found that there was absolutely no help whatsoever. And
I was so
so
excited I forgot to press the live button, Gina. But now we are live.
that's all right. So, should I repeat anything or should I just keep going?
No, no, go
Uh,
ahead. You're fine.
So, so it's always been a passion of mine to assist other women who who are experiencing some of the trials that they are experiencing with the judicial system, whether it's a court uh, custody battle or uh, uh, wrongful arrest, which we see a lot more of with women getting arrested for throwing a stuffed animal and those types of things, and being held to the full force of the law when it comes to, these types of domestic violence charges. So what prompted, when I was a young child, I don't know how young child, but maybe in my teens, I wanted to be an attorney. It was something that I wanted to do, and my focus was more on that I wanted to do something with child abuse and neglect and what have you. But once I got a little bit older and had children of my own, I really wanted to just kind of keep it mild and not emotional and have it more towards real estate and contract law, things that I thought didn't have an emotion to it. And I kind of got
Right.
thrust, I got thrust into litigation because of my own case. And I felt that I was not represented um and in my own divorce, and I felt like I was doing all the research, doing all the things to protect myself, when I felt others who I hired to help me, to protect me, were just miserably failing. And it almost felt like it was intentional. So I learned a lot. I mean, I had some family law. uh I had my degree, well, working towards my degree towards paralegal, and I had some experience in law firm working for a uh, family law attorney, and also she later became a judge. So I had a lot of, I think, real experience and knowledge, as far as how the judicial system worked when it came to child custody and domestic violence. And back when I was getting my divorce in the 90s, um, domestic violence was kind of a new term. It wasn't widely used as so much it is today. That's something that had just come into where laws were being passed. Here in Connecticut, we had laws that were passed in 1980. I think it was 80, 84, 83, or 84, with a woman from Torrington who was brutally uh, beaten in front of the police department in Torrington, Connecticut. And that was one of the landmark laws that came about here in Connecticut regarding domestic violence. And some things changed, but they really stay the same. It's really, you can have as
I'm
many,
gonna say
right,
sometimes the law it seems like it's a new thing, but it's really sort of a twist on the old that really
right.
doesn't do anything. I know here in Kentucky we have a law, Amanda's law, and it's a law where if you file a restraining order against someone, the judge can order that they wear an ankle bracelet to
Hmm.
determine their whereabouts. It's been used like twice in
Yeah.
the 15 years the law has existed. And we know that many times people break the restraining order, but it's too late. And
Hmm.
that's what happened. He broke the restraining order and he ended up murdering her
Hmm.
and then going to his parents' grave and having some sort of mental breakdown. And that's where he was arrested. But it was determined that there was no question that it was him. He'd been stalking her. He'd
Hmm.
been calling and calling and calling. But like I said, the law has been in existence for quite some time, but no judge uses it.
Right.
Um,
And the thing that's, one of the, most of my life I've had to deal with some sort of aspect of being, number one, a child who came from a divorced parents, and a family. My father abandoned us. He had no intentions of wanting to have a relationship with us. I set myself up 3 times in my life for him to abandon me. Considering the first time that he abandoned us when I was 4. So, I've spent a lot. I wanted to be an attorney, but it seemed that I was always having to deal with some aspect of not, because I came from a divorced family. There was something that was always stopping me. So, and it was always like something I had to deal with, which is something that I talk about with domestic violence. The victim is the one who has to empower herself. The victim is the one who has to pick herself up and
right,
get the resources. And one of the things that's the most difficult aspect of domestic violence is the fact that nobody gets the perpetrator to stop.
right.
Nobody does that. And so they're leaving her to her own devices, and they're insisting that she has to pick herself up and empower herself. However, there is just not a support system that is doing anything to stop him from continuing to abuse her. And that happens throughout the court systems. It happens in her personal life, social life. You can have restraining orders all day long.
Mhm.
It doesn't it doesn't stop him from doing things. Oftentimes
Well,
there's children involved, and you have to have that co-parent.
and we
Um,
always ask the question of the victim. Why did you stay? Why didn't you leave? What could you have done to change things? I know I encountered that same thing,
mhm,
and I know that you've had a similar experience. You
right.
know, going into counseling as a victim
Mhm,
means that you get to tell all the things that you did wrong or that you could have done differently that somehow would have changed things.
mhm,
And, you know, when you're a victim and you're trying to seek help for what has gone on as far as abuse, the last thing you can hear is that somehow you, who didn't do anything, did
right.
something wrong.
Right.
And I didn't last very long
Mhm,
in my own counseling. I'm back
right.
in counseling, um, and life coach, but those are things that I don't think people. I've been saying lately, if you know, you know, and
Mhm,
if you don't, be grateful, because we do so much more harm to ourselves as
mhm,
victims
mhm.
that we don't need society to rub that same wound,
Sure.
because we're very good at it. We've been groomed
Mhm,
to rub our own wound by the abuser.
right.
Well, you're stupid, you're this, you're
Mhm.
that. I mean, I just made a
And
post today about that.
right. And we get that same thing from the people that we're implored to reach out to. You know,
Right.
um, I had an incident happen a couple weeks ago where I was driving home, and there was a car behind me that had its brights on. It was so close to me, and it was an older police car with the white doors. You don't see too
Hmm.
many of them, but even if you do see them, you see the police emblem on the side of it. At least you can tell
Right.
if it's a real cop or not. And I don't ever recall. I mean, if there was a police officer that wanted to pull me over, I don't ever recall them not putting their lights on and not following someone for that long, that close. And when I called, I felt like, I really want to make a report about this. What if this is happening to other people? You know, because I was in my car by myself, and the police officer could have cared less, and he was trying to, um, find excuses as to why I shouldn't be
But that's
concerned
what you
about
do.
that. Yeah, I mean, the car was not even a car length behind me, you know. He
Right.
was so, you know, it was quite frightening, and he had his brights on, and it was difficult to drive like that, you know. And he was trying to make us, well, police officers do that to see if, you know, maybe you need, you know, they want to assess if you need to be pulled over. I'm like, well, having your brights on, and having, you know, me reduce my speed by 20 miles an hour because I can't see. Um,
Right.
yeah, there's gonna be a lot of reasons why he pulls me over at that point, you know. So I don't know, but
Well,
you know, so go ahead.
no, I was going to say, um, you know, just recently we heard a lot, and I know I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I know you are too, and I know that many people are, and I know narcissism is a new it's a new category, and it's overused to some degree, and yet at the same time it's real. um but do you think that we do a disservice on the terminology that we use, Gina? We use
Yeah.
domestic violence, we use domestic abuse, we've used intimate partner abuse,
Hmm.
spousal abuse, and this is, of course, not even to mention all the types of abuse.
Right.
So, just thinking about the overall umbrella term, are we bogged down by not calling it something else? Like,
Well, I think yes, and I think the reason being is that, you know, w- we say, you know, women who are in these abusive situations, then they have mental health issues, and they're not treating a human being. You know, you're not, when you start labeling things and you start saying, well, you know, this is what you're experiencing, or this is what you appear to me to be, is, you know, you're bipolar, you're this. And so when that happens, which is usually when this happens, she's going to be labeled all these things, because it's usually women that are labeled
and
this.
that's what happened to Gabby.
Right,
Gabby
exactly.
was labeled as somehow, I mean,
Anxiety or
victims are
whatever.
groomed.
Right.
Victims are groomed by abusers to think that what has happened
Hmm.
is somehow their fault.
Right.
So therefore, the police saw her as emotional,
Yeah.
unstable, and of
And
course,
crying
those
is
were
not,
the words he was using too.
right. Crying is not a mental illness.
No,
And this is one thing
Lord,
that
if it
we
is, Gina.
we have been so programmed, you know, if you're feeling down for 2 weeks, seek help. You know what? Go to the beach. You know, change your environment for 5 minutes a day.
Right.
Shut it off. You know, go do something different. You know, nobody can sit there and tell you that you have to grieve for only a certain amount of time. You know, we stop. We everything's depression. You know, everything is depression. That's how they label and term everything. And you know, I've never met anybody that's not bipolar in my life. You know, I've never I've seen everybody in my life go from a high to a low every day. They're mad at
Same thing with
something.
ADHD.
Right. Right.
Multitasking,
Yeah.
trying to do it all,
Right.
and
Right.
like
Exactly.
like Carol said, take this pill, take this
Hmm.
pill,
Yeah.
take this pill, take this pill.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, you know, that's one of the things I've said. You know, a couple of things, going back to something that you said earlier. It's like going to counseling is, you know, I was kept, you know, the whole divorce. I need counseling. You need counseling. You need counseling. Well, first of all, I was in counseling, and they used against me in my divorce to take my children. They had a pamphlet and everything. And I think I mentioned this before, but they had a pamphlet that says, we are not, you know, the clerk's office is not counselors. Divorce is hard. Please seek counseling. It will not be detrimental to your case. And except for Gina Medico. And, you know,
Right.
they used it as if I was doing something wrong. And then on one hand, they're telling me, you know, to go to counseling. And it's like, why would I go to counseling and expose more of my deepest emotions, and facts about my childhood that nobody knew except a counselor. I never told anybody.
Right.
I never told anybody. The only people that knew were, as far as I knew, DCF, my counselor, and I believe uh, the foster woman that I was living with or staying
Mm-hmm.
with. And so for him to have put me, have that personal private information and then to be able to use it as a weapon, because we all know that psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissists, they do that. They find out what is
Definitely.
your most intimate, private detail so that they can use it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just think it's a psychopathic. Anybody who gets delight out of seeing someone tormented or tortured or in distress is got a psychosis themselves.
Well, and
You need to stop.
that brings us to the question of, so many people will say, he's an abuser because he has also endured trauma. Okay,
And
I can buy it. I
right.
can buy it. But at the
Mhm.
same time, if I cry because you hurt me and you keep pushing the same button, there's like some sick joy or some sick pleasure about pushing that button to see if you'll cry. And then
Right.
if you don't cry and you're angry, then you are something else.
Right.
I mean, so it's like you can
You're in
never,
a rage. You're in a rage.
right?
Yeah.
You can never win.
No.
It is that's where there's just such that fine line. And again, I don't think the system wants to really understand. It's almost like they just want to solve the problem
Well, the
by
problem
making
is,
it go away somehow, but they're never getting to the problem.
well, part of it is they're all in bed together. They rely on each other. The court systems now defer to psych evaluations. They refer to using, therapy against a person in a court system. Which when I learned that aspect of it in school, that was not what that was for. And if you read the
Right.
law, which, in Florida's law, 90.503, and Connecticut is similar, you know, therapy records do not fall under HIPAA. If anybody tells you that, they're misinformed. It has a separate statute. You can't just say, I want your records. In Florida, you have to give notice that you're going to issue a subpoena. And that means you have 10 days to object. And your therapist should be objecting on your behalf. You should be objecting. You should be notified so that you can object. And you should be telling your therapist, if you have to go to court, you better be jumping up and down, stomping your feet, saying, absolutely not, no way are you going to ever get these records. Because even the law states that these are therapeutic in nature and they will be harmful to the person they pertain to. My former husband had my records and he disseminated it to people in my family where they had no business knowing what I talked about. And my family was already fragile to begin with. And by
Right.
him doing that, he totally destroyed my family. And he's quite proud of it. He's quite proud of it.
And Gina,
And that is the most disgusting, aspect of what is happening in our court system.
and schools do the same thing. We're told as teachers up front, if you don't want someone to be able to read something you have written, don't write it
Don't write it
down.
down.
And don't write it down in the file
Mhm.
everyone has access to.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and it's almost like, but sadly, it's because things have been used against the school
Mhm.
system.
Hmm.
as well as against the child
Right.
or the family that was trying to get support through
Sure.
the school. And
Hmm.
somehow the school wrote down, well, it's possible that the child is being abused. Just an
Hmm.
off the cuff statement with no facts, no action, nothing, just a thought of someone on
Hmm.
that particular day.
Yeah.
And that one comment in the file that goes public
Was a smoking gun.
is a smoking gun for
Right.
someone who wants to twist something.
Exactly. For someone who
That's
has
what
an evil
happened.
intent, somebody who has
Hmm.
a malicious intent, which um, I think that the fact that I was divorcing him should have sent red
Right,
flags to
right,
everybody that I went to for help, saying that, oh no, we need to protect her. But it just, I never, I was the only one protecting myself. In my deposition, they were asking me, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's confidential, and I don't really need to tell you what I talked about in therapy 10 years ago. None of your business. But my lawyer was not doing what I hired her to do, which was protect my interest. It's almost like what I'm finding, and this is still happening with lawyers, is they're just it's almost like it's already the game is already set. They've
well,
agreed to everything behind the scenes, and you're not aware of it, and you're saying, well, why aren't you bringing this up? And the one thing that I'm hearing, and I heard myself, was, well, you don't want to piss off the judge. Well,
right, right.
the, why is the judge not mad that he's calling me names when?
And the truth should not
Right.
piss off the judge, but
Exactly.
again, I think that the victim is often the only person who has the full picture, the full scope of everything.
Right.
But yet, what's happening behind the scenes, unbeknownst to the victim for a while, is everyone is being told something different about the victim.
Right.
Crazy, she's
Yeah.
jealous, she's controlling, she's
Mhm.
manipulative. All the things the abuser is what
Right.
they tell someone the victim is. So
Sure.
by the time you tell your truth, you tell your story, some people have already labeled you as you're the problem.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I don't know if the system, it's almost like they don't want to get involved in trying to decide who's the problem.
Mhm.
So sometimes they make both people the problem. So
Right.
they go to a house and both people get arrested. Okay. But then other times they go to the house and nothing happens. I know that growing up, we had a situation in our neighborhood. It was very clear to the neighborhood who the abuser was. It was the
Right.
husband. But yet the police would come, they would take the children to some sort of facility and or foster home. They would take the wife to the mental institution, and they
Mhm.
would take the husband to the hospital, or vice versa. Sometimes the wife went to the hospital and the husband went to jail. Um, and yet within a couple of days everybody was back home, everything seemed fine, and it's almost like turning over the trash can and then just writing it right back
Mm.
up in the same place. And it's like, how can we do this
Mm.
for year after year after year of there is no change? i
Mm.
don't i don't understand what is happening. And my mom would say the police don't really want to get involved either. I mean, we hear
Mhm.
neighbors say, "Well, I
Right.
don't really want to get involved. I don't know what goes on inside that house."
Yeah.
But the police also don't want to get involved. We've got some comments going on over here.
Well,
People in agreement with us.
I think some of it too, though. I mean, I don't know if you remember the interview we had with Detective Jack
Mm,
on Clubhouse, and where he talked about nobody wanted to go to these domestic violence calls, and what they were called. What they're called at first is a domestic disturbance. They're
mm,
not labeled as domestic
mm,
violence until the police officers get there, and they are the ones who label it or not. So, most research has been done, of course, because we've done 30, what, we're going on 35 years of research.
Right.
um, with the Department of Justice.
That was my eye roll.
Yeah, and most recent research is that they want to find out what's the best research for researching domestic violence. But so I lost my train of thought. But anyway, we I lost my train of thought. Tina, help me out here. What
Oh,
were we saying?
oh. You were talking about Jack.
Okay, Jack. Yeah, how see, one of the things that I think is a big problem here is there's very little training of police officers.
That's
They're lucky if they get 8 hours of training for domestic violence.
right.
You may get somebody who is going to be in they may be filling out forms, and so they get 40 hours. But you don't see somebody who has a degree, a criminal justice
Right.
degree, who
Right.
has a degree in and sometimes it's not good to have a degree in psychology and mental health, because those where you get your labels. Those are the people that say, oh, I know what's wrong with her. She's got bipolar. Oh, but they're not looking. uh, Years ago, I went to a seminar, foster children. I worked for a law firm that represented children who are abused in DCF custody, and I had the opportunity to go to one of the seminars that was put on by DCF, and there was 30% of children are medicated in domestic violence, and I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, 9, 10, 11. They're medicated with psychotic medication because they're acting out. First of all, you took them from their family. They don't understand that. They only understand what they are, and they don't understand that it's abuse necessarily at that age either. Um, so, but then they medicate them. Oh, but they don't with a serious diagnosis, but they don't think of it as PTSD.
Right.
You know, uh, one of the things that just happened recently in one of the cases that I'm working on, um, the CPS came. Of course, it comes with police. You know, they chose to do this around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where they went to have someone arrested wrongfully, by the way, for a violation of a restraining order. Now, this is a woman who supposedly was allegedly violating the restraining order. They couldn't wait till school let out. There was no urgency. There was no guns involved. There was no nothing. But here they're going to traumatize children who are already traumatized with school with a lockdown.
Yeah.
This is the way our militarized police force think, and they don't realize the problems that they're creating for our society's children. They have been the number one, uh, and the judicial system, keeping parents from children for
Mhm.
no reason other than the parent makes allegations, and there's no investigation to it. There's
Right.
absolutely no investigation. And
Well,
so
I
what
know.
happens is it goes through their court system, and it's all rubber stamped. There's nothing been changed with any laws that have been recently passed here in Connecticut. Nothing has changed. You sit in any courtroom and you'll be horrified by what you hear.
I
It
know
is
as a
not
school
run like a
teacher.
normal courtroom. I'll tell you right now, it is not run like a courtroom that I've been experienced in, because I have been experienced in courtrooms in Florida with my own case, number one, number two, with other cases, because I did work for
Mhm.
the courthouse for a short time.
Right.
And the judge is not as, I mean, yeah, the judge has command of his own courtroom, but I did not hear the state's attorney putting forth any of these charges and what the defendant is there for. I only heard the judge and this is my courtroom, and I'm going to show you who's boss. I don't
The
care what
power
you've been
trip.
charged with. And one of the
Power
things
trip
that I
judge.
witnessed in that was the judge was biased towards certain people. There was times when the judge would say, okay, do you have any questions? Do you have any anything? But then when someone else would come in, he would they would speak up. He would not let them speak. And when they would speak up, putting forth the Your Honor, I'm not guilty, I shouldn't even be here. then and then when they raise their voice because he's not wanting to hear her, then he gets really angry, and they're coined words. Coined words. These are the coined words in our court system: belligerent and combative, and that's only in your words. You know,
Right.
and you see the marshals become more aggressive, and there's no need to be. Just a person saying, look, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything, I shouldn't be here. The judge does not want to hear it because they have an agenda. There are court stakeholders. That is what is wrong with our system today. If women call the police too many times for domestic violence, there's two things that are probably going to happen. Number one, CPS is going to get involved, and they're going to remove the children. They're going to make it impossible for her to get them back. Number two, they're going to, say that she's the problem, and they're going to put her into the system. Either they're going to arrest her or they're going to put her into a mental institution. And what they're doing when they arrest her for with the children is failure to protect because she was abused. But this is the best part of it all. What happens is he goes through his diversion programs through the court system, and then he comes out of it squeaky clean 6 months later. She's tied up as tight as can be, either in the mental health system or in the judicial system.
Right.
He made sure she got there, because that's what men are doing with these restraining orders. They are using them as a tool. And Senator Fishbein warned us that this may be the case. And guess what, Senator Fishbein? You were right. I can tell you many cases here in Connecticut that these men are following a guideline and how they can get custody, and they can get the mother out of the picture and get her wound up tight. And that is what's happening. We do not need, I say it, everybody says, oh, we need to get more laws. No, we don't, because these laws are being used against us. What we need to do is we need to get the government out of domestic violence in this way.
Well, and I don't know which side it is, because I go back and forth. It's almost like the abuser at times is playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers, and nobody can see that the abuser actually has laid out and worked to create a narrative by through video, through voice, through internet, through social media, through any means necessary. They will create a narrative.
Oh, yeah.
And they will create the paperwork. They will create the trail.
Yep.
They will talk to the people who can put something in writing that seems similar to what they're trying to say.
Right.
Again, just as they have groomed and manipulated the victim, they will groom and manipulate the system as well. Yeah. And then I go back, then I also say at times the system is also playing checkers. So here you go in, you go in and you think, okay, the system is fair. The system is going to figure out. The system is going to.
They're going to see what I see.
And you start to say something, and you're dismissed, or you are called out.
Right.
And and what happens is the system triggers the same cycle the abuser did. And so it's like, well, I'll just shut up. I'll shut down. I'll shut out. I won't say anything because that's what will get me something. Right. And it's like, you never know which way to go. And so many, we talk about police officers who don't have the training.
Well, I don't even think
it's just a lot of judges and prosecutors that they have any more training, because it's almost like they can't see that they're being manipulated, but they also don't see that they are narcissistic at times in their own outpouring of trauma to a victim, or that they are participating in further abusing. The system the system becomes a tool for the abuser to use.
They're the biggest facilitators of domestic violence. They are
Yes.
the biggest. I, if I had known, if I had known, 30, almost 30 years ago, that I would not have gotten my children because I was a woman, I never would have filed for divorce.
Right.
I would have stayed, because I'll tell you, when you're abused, and you learn, you learn.
Right.
And, he was never around. He was never around. He was hardly ever around. And if I had been educated to the fact that because I was a woman, that I had no shot to get my children, I never would have filed for divorce. I thought for
Right.
sure, because he was, first of all, he had a alcohol and drug problem. Um, and I had more steady work than he did. I worked for a senator. I worked for lawyers. I'm like, I have the whole legal community that I'm in and out of courtrooms every day, pretty much. Not, out of the courthouse every day with my job. And it's like, it was almost as if, Tina, that I committed a crime. Everybody saw me. They all can vouch for me, but they're still going to go along with what this guy said
Right.
because he said it. Because
Right.
he said it. Then, if and that's what we're finding. That's what I'm still finding with women,
Hmm.
because he can make allegations, and the number one allegation a man is going to make is that she's crazy. She's
Well, I
got
mean,
mental
Tina,
health issues, and the problem is when one of the things that the court's mentality of all this is that if you do go for help, that you are admitting something is wrong with you. They don't look at it as the therapeutic value of it, that therapy does help you. They'll say that it helps you, right? Go to therapy to help you. But in the next breath, they're going to say something is wrong with you, that you have to go to therapy. And
but
that's
in my own case, oh my gosh, I mean, the ex loves the court system. So he has learned to use the court system to further abuse and torment. I mean, so
but
I
but that
counted
was
up
that
one
was
day
until
at least 15 things filed against me. Um, and it was like, really, you're letting him file something else? As I told the court system, if you let him play in the sandbox, he's going to play. I mean, this is what he's hoping for. He's hoping to catch someone
yeah,
on the right day who knows nothing. And sometimes the court system acts as though they don't know anything.
exactly. You wonder where they get their education from. I
Right.
mean, honestly, Tina, I honestly wanted to be an attorney so badly, and because I had a passion for it.
It's never too
And I
late.
realized I didn't realize until I was in that courtroom and I'm sitting there listening to these attorneys and judges, and I had one judge who was like, "Can we make this quick? I've got tea time at 3, and I want to get the heck out of here." And you know what, Tina? It didn't dawn on me that these people were just in a job. It did not dawn on me. I was so
Yeah.
naive. I was so naive.
Right.
And I liked my naivete then, but it just hit me so hard and so home. And it didn't, you know what? I got an answer to this just like 6 or 7 years ago when I was in college and I was studying to get my degree for domestic violence, my criminal justice degree with an emphasis on domestic violence and victimization. And I didn't really hit home to me until I was speaking with someone who had lived in the 50s. He grew up in the 50s. Excuse me, he was born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s, and went to college I believe, in the early 70s. And back then, and we seem, younger women and a lot of women who are in this system, they seem to forget that women were very limited as to their education. We could
Mhm.
get 12 years of school, but he was the golden child in this family, this man that I spoke to. And he was given private education. He went to a private high school, and he got the best education. And his sisters went to public school. And do you want to know why? Because he was a man and he was expected to have a career, while the women were expected to just go off and get married.
Well, Gina, I'm not going to tell you that, culturally speaking, in some countries, that is still the case across the world, where they, the boys in the family are the more educated,
Mhm.
and the young girls are not. And there have been now some schools created specifically for girls who never had a chance to go to school, because again, we educating the women, though, will change a society.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we are the ones who are natural guardians of children. We are the ones
Right.
who are gonna raise that narcissist. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, and that, that's what we find is women, men who are narcissistic have a distorted relationship with their mother.
If
There's
you
some sort of
empower, if you
distorted relationship
empower
with
a
their mother.
woman, if you
Hmm.
empower a woman with knowledge and
Right.
information
Hmm.
and access
Correct.
to knowledge and information, you will change the world, because women are the ones who are still worldwide
Hmm.
predominantly in charge of the family
Right.
and that family structure. And
Correct.
if she herself knows that loving herself means setting boundaries, self respect, self love, and,
But
you know,
I agree with that, Tina. But the thing is that I respected I had boundaries. I respected my boundaries. It's not a matter of women don't have boundaries and they don't know how to set them and they're letting people walk all over them. That's
right,
not true. People intentionally walk all over them. And I'll tell you this. And the reason being is, and I'll tell you, because I was saying, excuse me, no, you're not getting my records. I'm not signing a waiver. That's confidential. I'm not disclosing anything. And his attorney sat there and said, oh, you really think that we're not going to get those records? I believe he already had those records. I
right,
believe that my husband had used my social security number and obtained those records. I believe it. And um and it was, they had him within a day. How can you have a notice sent out that there was going to be a subpoena issued and then no time to object to it, and then him to get these records
so
within a
are we
day?
looking at,
I've never was able to object to it. And you know what? I told my attorney to object. No way am I signing a waiver. And
so then
she
are we
never
looking
ever
at the
she never
patriarch?
obtained those records herself, which any lawyer is competent, any competent lawyer, okay? And they don't have to, it's kind of like law class 101. It's like your first class in law
Right,
school, no matter what type of law, like what type of class, if you're a paralegal school or whatever, is that you uh, gather your own evidence for your client. If he's saying that I have all these medical records or whatever that they need, don't you think you should have those records and see what they say first and go over them with your client? She never did that. She never
right.
did that. She never obtained those records, and she lied to the court. She lied. She lied. And this is what, I don't want to talk about my own case, but I do. But this is a lot of what's happening, and this is one of the biggest problems with our judicial system when it comes to domestic violence. They are not in, excuse me, they are not investigating these cases of domestic violence.
No,
Women are made to walk on eggshells in the courtroom
that's what I was going to say. Right,
with their own attorneys. They're told to shut their mouth, don't talk about it, don't piss anybody off, they don't care about abuse, they don't want to know, just don't say anything. They don't care what the truth is. So they're rubber stamping every case in
so
family court. They're rubber
as
stamping
we
it.
roll forward, we've got 31 nights to talk about domestic
Right.
violence awareness, and there will be, I have no doubt there is going to be controversy about how to change it. There is controversy in someone's story. Um, there's going to be controversy in what people share or what they don't share, what they experienced versus what someone else experienced. And I just want to set the stage a little bit.
Sure.
This podcast is for those who have a voice. Some people don't have a voice. And some people are not free to use their voice yet. Maybe they have come and gone, sadly, at the hands of abuse. They have passed. I know several individuals personally that have passed on because of domestic abuse. So I want the audience to understand this podcast is for conversations that you may agree with, you may disagree with, you may be shocked at, you may be surprised about. But number one, I think we all have to set the premise that a victim should be believed, because so many times in the system, whatever that system is, um, the victim is not believed. And if you start from that premise, you can only fall down the path of you then punish the victim more than you end up punishing the other side, because you've already assumed certain things to be true or not true.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want people to think about that as we roll forward. Gina is telling you her story, her experiences in the courtroom. There will be people who had similar experiences. And then there will be people who say, yeah, but we need the police and we need the court system and we need this and we need that.
Mm-hmm.
And that may all be true to some degree, but some of our experiences have not been that experience. And so therefore, as we listen over the course of this month, Gina is going to come back tomorrow night to talk very specifically about a case that she's dealing with right now. We also have people who have endured, sexual abuse, physical abuse, stalking, um, narcissistic abuse. We've got lawyers, we've got defense people, we've got, life coaches. We're going to cover a lot of content this month. So Gina, as we roll forward into the month, how can you help us to frame a little bit about, what we will hear and what we should feel? And I guess ultimately, because I know as a victim, I have often felt helpless.
Mm-hmm.
My own story is something I will share over the course of the podcast as well. But how do we empower the stories we will hear and the things that are hard to hear,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to? I mean, part of why domestic violence occurs is we don't want to know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't want to know.
We don't believe that it exists. We don't look at it a lot of times as a problem. Oh, you just got into an argument. We had this Jennifer's Law that passed just recently, and we're hearing advertisements from attorneys saying, did you get into a verbal argument with your spouse and you got arrested or you got a restraining order? Please call us. We can help. So, there's still a criteria you have to meet for verbal abuse. You have to have at least two examples of them being coercively controlling. So, we didn't find that we had much to be able to obtain a restraining order for physical abuse that would maintain, for what we needed it for. So, you know, it's difficult to say what is going to be helpful in this situation. But I think that we really have to remember, and I try to emphasize this as strongly as I possibly can. The most dangerous time for a woman is when she leaves or when she has left. Those are the chances where she's going to be stalked. She's going to be, those are the chances where she's probably going to be murdered, especially if she has the children or she's taken the children. So we need to make sure that she doesn't do not ever let on that you're leaving. You have to maintain a business as in status quo until you can get
Right.
yourself a viable plan to leave. And we need to stop, we have this false sense of security with a restraining order. A restraining order does not stop somebody from harming you. It only There's only possible consequences after the fact if he's prosecuted, if he's even arrested. I had a restraining order. My ex came to my house, lifted the sliding glass door off the hinge, and I'm on the phone with the police, and he sees that, and this is when we didn't have cell phones, and he left at this point, and the cops tell me, well, he's no longer a threat to you. And I'm like, are you going to go arrest him? I've got to restrain him. No, we're not. No, don't. We're not doing this. And
Yeah.
this is the problem. And the thing is they oftentimes know,
Oh, yeah.
and they'll stand you. They have to keep away from you 100 yards, and they'll stand at that 101 yard line. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, yes.
there's nothing you can do. And it's frustrating because it's designed, one of the things that we have to remember is that their whole MO is to wear you down. They want
Right.
you to break. They want you to lose it. They want to be able to say, they're going to do everything they possibly can to you, and they want to say, see, look, I told you, look at her, she's out of her mind.
Right.
Well, nobody tells you that he just, you know, threw your car keys in the lake behind your house. Nobody ever says that. Oh, she lost her car keys, but ha ha ha, he threw them in the lake behind your house. Those are the things that, they don't, or he's made you late for work 4 days in a row, and he thinks it's funny, and you already told him, look, my boss told me if I'm late again, I'm going to get fired. But he thinks it's funny that you're late and scrambling, and going to bed, going to work with yesterday's clothes because you have 10 minutes to get there and you don't want to get fired. These are the things that and I don't think they're narcissistic. I think they're sociopaths. I think they're
Right.
psychopaths.
That's it. I think that
And
we have, I
anybody that gets delight in these things, really, they have to be looked at.
I
When you
just hope
encounter somebody who
I
thinks
hope I
it's
can find
funny,
someone who will talk a little, because narcissism got a resurgence. Not that it ever has been downplayed, but the whole Depp Heard trial, that was very public, talked a lot about how she had a narrative, and she played certain things a certain way, and she took video, and she did this and that. And so I don't want to downplay that men are abused as well. And there's a case that certainly went Johnny Depp's way. But it's going to be interesting over the course of the month. Like I said, we will cover many things. We will cover many topics. We will hear many stories. And I think it's really important to listen with the understanding that someone's lived experience may be very different from yours. I mean, the premise of this podcast is to have a conversation. And that conversation can be, hard to believe, hard to hear, hard to know, hard to understand. And yet, we all come from a place of our story needs to be told. And this month, we will be focused on Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I hope that many of you who are tuned in will gain information, gain knowledge, gain understanding, but also gain compassion and empathy for those who have experienced things perhaps that you have not, or from a perspective. If nothing else, they have endured something not from your perspective, but from their own perspective. And, that is where we all begin. It's from our own perspective. And there are lots of theories out there about lots of things. Narcissistic, and the empath, the abuser and the victim, and how it's just like a storm made in hell that meets in the middle.
Mhm.
But whatever it is, we're going to talk about it. Let me tell you a little bit. Gina will be back, I said, tomorrow night, to talk specifically about a case that I know only a little bit about, so I'll learn more tomorrow. Carol, who is in the listening in the comment box over here, she will be our guest on Tuesday. I'm sorry. On Wednesday, I have a returning guest. Some people have wanted to be a part of this because they want to catch up on where they are in their healing, where they are post trauma, and where they have gained lessons and learned more. So some of the guests will be returning and will be sharing things. Karen will be here. I know her son is in defense training. Um, I know Gina has a friend, Steve Kaplan, an attorney. I hope to get him on at some point with Gina. So we're still working on some guests as the month fleshes out, but you will see Gina at least twice more tomorrow night, and also on the 31st when we recap. Um, to Keisha, who has also been in the comment box, she and I are going to do an update about the Gabby Petito case. There are still some things developing there. So we will be present every night on the YouTube channel, Real Change, on TikTok. Hopefully, we won't get bananaed because we do talk about some things that TikTok may not like. And then we'll also be on the Real Change business page. We'll be on my own personal page. I do have a group for survivors. It's a private group. So let me know if that is something that you're interested in. And let me just say that if you are a survivor and or you are currently living in an abusive situation, or perhaps you don't even know yet, but you're feeling the eggshells, you're feeling off the cuff, you're feeling uncertain, unsure, traumatized, whatever, reach out to me on my Facebook, on my personal page, on my TikTok page. I do have an Instagram page, but it was hacked, so I don't keep up with it as much as I could or should or used to. But we'll be here. And the number one thing that you will find with Gina, as well as Karen, Aunt Pat, and a few others, Carol, Takesha, myself included, we're survivors. And no matter how ugly your story is, how unbelievable your story is, we're survivors. And we know how crazy it can get, and we know that we believe you. And we know that we are here to support you with resources and or information. So, Gina, I want to give you an opportunity to have one last thought. And if you want to give us a little bit of a snippet
Sure.
for tomorrow, that would be great. Like I said, we will be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Carol, I know you're in the Central Time Zone. She's like, are you all having technical difficulties? Where are you? Where are you? Carol's been a great supporter, and it's like, Carol, it's 9 o'clock my time. It's 8 o'clock your time. It's like time zones are not your friend at times. So go ahead, Gina.
Well, thank you so much, Tina, for giving me the opportunity to speak about this subject that's so passionate to my heart, because of what I experienced and what I don't want to see, other women experience. Unfortunately, I have been, and that's what got me back into helping women. But I think what we need to continue to do is, make sure that when we are into the court systems that, we do stand up for ourselves. If we have an attorney who's not representing us appropriately, we do, file those grievances if we have to. Um, Sometimes it might not be until after you've found another counsel, but um, we need to just start standing up for ourselves. If you have an advocate that is in your community, that is passionate and that will write letters for you on your behalf, as a domestic violence survivor, whether you're in the criminal justice system because you were arrested for, what they call reactive abuse, where that happens more often than not, where women are arrested because they finally had enough and they swing back, and he calls the police and she gets immediately arrested, because most often she tells the truth. But anyway, um, so we just need to just make sure that when we are witnessing domestic violence, that we do stand up to it, as best we can. Try is not to dismiss it or excuse it, or tell her what she should and shouldn't do, and um, if you can help, please do so. It's may save her life.
Well, I'm going to turn the camera around. So for the TikTok people, hopefully you're still there. I'm going to turn the camera around. So,
Oh, and I never told you about. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about a case that's here in Connecticut for someone who was arrested for violating a restraining order that was not served on her. And the case basically has taken a turn on its own. I mentioned some of the things that were kind of happening in her case when I was speaking earlier. But it's been going on for about a year, and currently she is she's been detained in a mental health facility as a result of allegations that were made on a restraining order that was never put into it was never put into a final restraining order, because it lacked allegations. It was not sufficient for a restraining order to be maintained. But it was one of those cases where it was used. The new law was used. And he was able to get one for 2 weeks, which that's really difficult. But one of the things I'll go into tomorrow night is the fact that he was setting her up, and it was clearly calling the police, calling the courthouse, and he had it all set up, and was made part of the restraining order, which was, to me, was like, why are they not investigating this? And partly the reason why it was such an egregious case is the fact that she had called in for domestic violence, and they ignored her. And but
well, we appreciate not only you sharing her story, but appreciate the fact that she is willing to allow you to share her story, because right now um, she is, as Gina said, being detained and is not on the outside to speak right now. So, let me see. Did you see the message from Karen that she will have an update
I
about
did not.
changing? I don't know if you can see the comments when
I
I
did see comments, but I lost my train of thought
That's all
at one
right.
time, and that's because I read something and it threw me off.
Well, Karen wanted you to know that she will have an update about changing her social
Oh,
security
oh,
number.
that's fantastic.
Um, so I just want to say, thank you to the people on TikTok. I know this is not my usual demeanor and persona. Usually I'm crafting, trying to, find my own love, joy, and peace. but I do want to thank you for being here. We will be here. Thank you, Mar. Thank you, Kimmy. We will be here for 31 nights. Um, Today was rough for me to rev up because I have to dig deep down into my own soul and spirit of 6 years ago and realize that what we're talking about is me. And I didn't think I'd be in these shoes. I didn't think that I would be having a podcast to talk about domestic violence. I certainly did not anticipate 31 nights in October, but I feel committed to the cause. I started this podcast on June 1st, 2021 for that is World Narcissistic Abuse Day. And in 2021 and in 2022 and now in 2023, we're doing the 31 nights in honor of Gabby Petito, but at the same time in honor of every woman and man, but my heart is with women, sorry, but every woman who has endured trauma from the issue of domestic violence, whether it be personally or through your mom, your sister, a loved one. And I will tell you that Gabby's story really got to me. And so, even if it is a stranger story online or somewhere that you have had an experience with domestic violence, intimate partner abuse, that it is in honor of them. And so I appreciate your being here. I appreciate the love and the likes and the shares. And we'll be back every night in October. We will do a podcast. If I don't have a guest for that evening, I will replay an episode. I have a situation in California that is going up for parole again. It is the murder of a young woman, 25. Her parents have taken the month of October off because this is the third time he's going up for parole for the murder of their daughter, and they just need this moment. And so they'll be coming out of their own cocoon right now in November when we know more. So tune in here on TikTok, tune in on the Real Change page on Facebook, tune in on my page, which is Tina M. Durbin on Facebook. One of the things that I have done, Gina loves this statement, good or bad, right or wrong, real or imagined. I was damned and determined
Thank you.
to be very public. So I thank you. I could not be public without your love and support. Thank you, Kimmy K. I know there are many of us out there, and there are many of us who don't talk about it necessarily. Trauma and abuse is one of those things that we learn to compartmentalize. We learn to squash it down. We learn to not share when we don't feel safe. And I get that. So, I use my voice as best I can. And I use it for those who are afraid to use their voice or, God rest their soul, unable to use their voice, unable to have helped someone. So, Kimmy, I will make sure that I send you that. Thank you. So I say I love you. I say to the people out there on Real Change and YouTube and all those other places, thank you so much for being here. I will see you back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Gina will be here to talk more about her specific case that she's working on. And that's it.
Thank you, Tina.
Go in love and light and peace. And don't forget to have a cup of coffee in my honor, because I believe that all good conversations begin with a cup of coffee. Okay, you can have a drink of your choice, but you know what I mean. So, thank you, everybody. I'll see you on TikTok. So, thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Kimmy. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. I am going to say good night on TikTok. All right, so TikTok's gone bye-bye. So we are only on the Real Change YouTube, and all those are places on the Facebook. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Again, this is Love Over Coffee. My name is Tina Durbin. I'm the host, and actually, I'm just the vehicle. I let other people drive this car, and I am here to share stories and to share knowledge and information. So please join us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and all other time zones follow accordingly. And we'll see you tomorrow night, Gina.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Voices now heard.
Voices now heard. That's right. Thank you, Karen. Karen is saying, mahalo, Gina, for all that you do. Our heroine in the stories. And thank you, Carol. Good night, everybody. We will see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night.